Post-game show coming to you live from Studio A of our CHGO offices here in the West Loop of Chicago. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, Herb Lawrence.
Hello.
Our CHGO White Sox community leader. You can follow him at Eckmanwall23. You can follow me at Sean_W_Anderson. You can follow the show at CHGO_White Sox. We are coming to you live after, honestly, one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, my God.
This might have been the most worst played baseball game in the history of baseball. So congratulations to both the Angels and the White Sox. Herb and I went to the game today to try to see history. And heading into the eighth inning, we were getting history. The White Sox were on the precipice of losing 121, but then a double, another double, a dropped pop fly, and then an Andrew Benintendi single gives them the 3-2 victory. Their first comeback victory this entire season. It only took them like 78 games. Play it again, because it is history.
History! Amazing. I just can't believe the Angels out White Sox the White Sox today. Like, we were here watching, and the CHGO Cub people just finished. So Ryan Herrera and Cody Delmendo were over there watching with us. And Ryan says, "Oh no, that guy's not going to catch the ball." It was an easy pop fly where Jack Lopez is kind of like stumbling. I was like, "I've seen that before. That looks White Soxy."
That happened in the fifth inning.
Yeah, and it was, yeah, exactly. It happened to the White Sox in the fifth inning, and everybody let out a derisive cheer. My head was down, so I didn't really see it at the ball game. But when Jack Lopez did that, I was like, all right. The White Sox are going to win this, and then Andrew Benintendi right after that with his RBI single to seal this sumbitch up. I cannot believe that the Angels are that bad, like actively out loud that bad. I've watched the White Sox. I know they're that bad. But the Angels are just like, yeah, we're going to out White Sox you guys tonight.
It's
not tonight, guys.
Hilarious to see in, I believe it was the fifth inning, right? Yeah. The top of the fifth inning, 1 out, 0-0 game. Jonathan Cannon, who pitched fantastically today.
Again.
We might not get into Cannon because we have Chris Getz sound to get into. We have, obviously, this whack game that we just saw. And then we'll be joined by Vinnie Duber to talk more about Chris Getz. There's also some Eloy Jimenez news that we will get into. But it's the top of the fifth inning, 1 out. Mickey Moniak is up to bat, and there is a ball hit right in front of the pitcher's mound. A little to the right if you're Chucky Robinson, a little to the right of the mound, so closer to Gavin's side, and you have Vargas charging in from third base, you have Sheets charging in from first base, you have Cannon at the mound and Chucky all converging, and somehow, even though NBCSN picked up as clear as day someone saying, "I got it," Herb, they didn't have it.
No.
How weird is that?
They're the White Sox.
This team, of all teams? I mean, Chris Getz said this offseason he was going to fix the defense.
Apparently. And when I was a child and playing baseball, that ball was supposed to be called off by the first baseman. The first baseman was supposed to be in charge. And you said it was hit to Gavin's side, so that's supposed to be his ball. The pitcher shouldn't be there at all. He should vacate the premises immediately. That should be Gavin's ball. And to have it drop on the ground is so White Sox. But the Angels could not be outdone. Jack Lopez, like, I got you guys. You guys are in safe hands right here. I got you right now, and I'm going to let you tie this game up immediately in the eighth inning. I was like, they're out of the inning. They got the 2 doubles. Good job, White Sox, coming back. I appreciate you, Brian Ramos. I appreciate you, Zach DeLoach, for not giving up. But the Angels are going to get out of this inning with an easy pop-up by Luis Robert, who looked disinterested. Looked like he was like, oh, man, I'm swinging out the first pitch of this ball, at-bat, so I can get to Cancun quicker. And Jack Lopez like, pause, man. Sit your ass right there at first base, brother, because I'm going to drop this right in the center field.
Hey, and also just to at least, speak to Luis Roberts' Cancun trip.
Yes.
I mean, you're going to get there on Monday no matter what.
Exactly.
Whether you go 6-0 in these last 6 or 0-6, Cancun's waiting for you.
It's all right. Yeah, you can just chill out. You're going to be there, brother. It's going to be enjoyable. The sun's still going to be there. The drinks are going to be flowing.
Absolutely. Hey.
Give your all. Every at-bat. That at-bat, he was like, nah, son. It's inside fastball. Pop straight up.
Sun will be shining. We appreciate everyone hanging out with us. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button. We see our guy Titus hanging out with us. Victor. We also got Jay Corona hanging out with us. And we got a super chat from our guy Corey. Thank you to Corey for the $2 super chat saying, what do we say to the god of death? Not tonight. Pretty intense. God of death.
Hey, we all know this is inevitable that we're going to get this at least one more loss. But if you're a White Sox fan, staving off being the worst team in baseball history for one night, especially if you're at the game, which we were, it was a derisive cheer every time the White Sox did something kind of good. But also, we weren't there in the 8th inning when that happened. But from the TV sound, it sounded like the fans were like, yeah, cheering. And then when the game ended, it sounded like a mix of boos and cheers.
So when they dropped, the first time we heard the sell the team chants was in the 5th inning after they dropped that ball.
Yeah.
That's when the crowd truly got into it. But then in the top of the 8th, that's when you could play. NBC Sports Chicago had about 18 seconds that was truly just dead air of sell the team. So way to show out, Sox fans. I think there was probably about 11,000 to 15,000, even a Brooks Boyer sighting. I'm glad to see at least the vitriol get out a little bit and the Sox being able to push that out. But to at least Corey's super chat, do you know what the god of death looks like? He's got this big hood.
Okay.
Right? And his face is recessed. And then when he is, taking your life because he's god of death, Jerry Reinsdorf's face just emerges. He's got a scythe. He's scything people down.
17,606.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we were there. I don't know if I could say that enough. We were there first. Obviously, 500 was closed. 300 seemed open. There was at least some people there, and especially the boxes were open. But I mean, it was mainly 100, and we were saying probably about 11 to 15. So I'm surprised that's 17.
And it was also dog day too.
True.
So the last
Are they
dog
counting
day,
dogs?
I didn't see it on this attendance, but I'm sure that drove people to the game. Our guy Matt Berkland, he went. The only reason he went is because he had to have his dog Joe Furrow in the house.
Joe Furrow.
Yeah, it's a great name. It's awesome name.
Hell yeah.
A corgi too.
Oh, nice.
Great corgi.
But yeah, it was dog day, and I mean, most people seemed happy to be there. I think most people. I saw some tweet that it's like, oh, can't believe some of you are going to be happy about this record being broken. It's like, I'm not happy. I'm not excited to be here talking about this dog crap team.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they were anything else than this. And I've talked about my wishes and wants and hopes for this team. And at least for the past 2.5 years, they've done the complete opposite. So it's tough for me to be like, oh, they don't deserve this. Oh, man, what if my friends send me all this stuff saying the Sox are bad? It's like, yeah, what else am I going to say? It's clear as day that this organization is run ass backward.
Correct.
And they deserve to pay the consequences for this organization being run ass backward. If this owner is going to be saying that he needs a new stadium and billions of dollars from Chicagoans to build this new stadium because no one shows up, is it because the stadium sucks? Is it because of the location of the stadium? Or 17,000 people willing to show up, especially with $10 parking, to go and see your team, even if they are on the precipice of setting a record? So it's one guy's fault, and he deserves it. Jerry Reinsdorf, you deserve this. I'm glad you avoided it, because now tomorrow you get to watch this bad baseball team lose their 121st game.
Yeah, I hope he was there, and I'm sure he was in his box, and he heard the lust sell the team. It was great. It was good to hear the White Sox fans cheer that and say sell the team. And if you're watching, you heard it. But at the ballpark, it was loud. Like clear as day. I was like, I'm very proud of these White Sox fans, because I know people are mad that, firstly, that people like us went to the game, paid money, and gave Jerry money. We bought him on game time, so we didn't pay Jerry any money. Those tickets were already bought, and Jerry already had that money.
I paid $15 for a hot dog and a pop.
Exactly. And
I gave him $15.
Yeah, it was $5 for a Miller Lite, so I got one of those. But 2 months from now, even though this is the all-time worst team, I'm going to miss going to the ballpark, the actual act of going to the ballpark, because there's nothing better than going to a game like today. We had a great time, saw a bunch of people out today, and sat in the 108, talked with those people. Like, that in 2 months from now is like, golly, when you're watching some SEC football game on a Saturday night, it's like, yeah, this is all right, but I would rather be at the ball game. I would rather be talking to my people about this badass White Sox team and having a good time at the ballpark. There's nothing that can beat that feeling. Not at all.
You're talking to your people. You're talking to Mr. Hand. You're talking to Lil Yumper. You're talking to Brooks Boyer.
I did not.
Your man's Brooks Boyer.
He came down like right in the 5th inning, and we were about to leave. I was like, "That's the perfect time to leave."
Yeah, I don't have any interest in talking to Brooks Boyer. Yeah, what am I going to say to Brooks Boyer?
There's a message back in there, and your mom probably told you, and everybody's mom probably told you, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Yeah. So I just bounced. We were going to leave in the 5th inning anyways, because that game was cruising, and so we had to get back to the studios right here to do this post game. So we were going to be gone anyways, but I was like, yeah, the man's here. I don't need to be here anymore.
Yeah, and then even to that clip, too, because that's around when we left, that 5th inning where they dropped the pop-up, Steve Stone saying, like, well, and they need a closer. And it's like, well, Steve, the score's 0-0. The closer does not bat. And also, you're talking right as they're dropping a fly ball. So it's like, if you have a great closer, Mariano Rivera, Edwin Diaz, Bobby Jenks, whomever you want, I don't think the closer's really going to like Gavin Sheets dropping a first base pop-up. There's so much wrong with this organization. Sarah, can you scroll up just a little bit? We do have 71 people watching. We appreciate everyone watching. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit that subscribe button. We will be here tomorrow and Thursday, post-game shows, no matter what happens, whether they win again, if they win 2 straight, if they lose, we'll be here to recap.
I just thought about this. Since it was Dog Day, theoretically, they couldn't do fireworks after the game.
No, true. And no home runs, at least for the White Sox, so no worries there.
Yeah.
Our guy, Edgardo, making sure that we are hitting this, because this is also important. The White Sox won, but most importantly, the Barons won. Congratulations to our guy, Sergio Santos, manager of the Barons, and all of the players that won and secured the first Southern League title for the Barons and the White Sox since 2013. It was a 10-inning game, a 2-1 win. DJ Gladney with the RBI, game-winning RBI. So congrats to the Barons. And then to Jared in the chat, our guy Jared, diehard. Appreciate you. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us. And especially Jared for being a diehard. Sean, you act like it's going to affect Jerry. He's a billionaire who is years away from its death. It's going to create another losing association for us fans, but the average person will never associate the record with Jerry. If you could scroll down just a little bit too, I think it will always be associated with the White Sox, which I hear. That part I understand, but I do think that at least the White Sox fandom will never let people forget that it was Jerry.
Yes.
I think that, especially when we've been talking about the 1962 Mets, people brought up, oh, they're an expansion team. That's why they're so bad. I think that the spotlight 100%, and it's my job to do that. So I will make sure that I am shining that spotlight 100% on Jerry Reinsdorf. It's difficult for me to sit here and just sulk. Like, I don't know the idea and who it benefits for me to be just completely dismissive of the possibility that Chris Getz can finally be the voice that gets to Jerry Reinsdorf, or maybe that 121 losses can get to Jerry Reinsdorf. But, like, trust me, that part that's being optimistic is like 1% of me. 99% of me knows that we are screwed, knows that the next time this team might even be at 500 is 2028. And if he's still alive in 2028, it might even be longer. So I understand that this is Jerry's fault. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that people know, White Sox fans or not, that this is Jerry's fault. So just to put that out there, because I put out a tweet too, like, Sox are mired in mediocrity, and we'll get to Chris Getz in just a second. And they're like 538 and 638 since he said that. And like they've had 3 of their 6 worst seasons since mired in mediocrity was spoken. Like, this team has been horrible, and it's for one reason and one reason only, and it's Jerry Reinsdorf.
Yeah, I won't blame Pedro Grifol 5 years from now that the White Sox were bad in 2024. I will blame Jerry Reinsdorf. Won't even blame the players necessarily, because they're going to be in and out of my mind just like that. I won't remember a Justin Anderson in 5 years. But Jerry Reinsdorf, I will remember when Jerry Reinsdorf has his obituary, and I'm not wishing for it. In his obituary will be he was the manager of he was the owner of the 2005 World Series champion and the worst team in baseball history in 2024 and probably 2025. That's gonna be his legacy, undoubtedly.
Well, and also like my Jared saying your opinion of Jerry isn't going to change with or without the record, and I don't know. I think if this team actually came out of the rebuild all right and maybe have won a playoff series or so, maybe that would have changed my mind. But it's the fact that they went from 2020, 2021, the whole La Russa stuff, Kenny Williams still not being able to speak about it.
Yeah.
Like that's the issue. Is like how 2020 to 2024 has been handled is the reason I hate Jerry Reinsdorf.
Yeah, and like today, the day that they clinched a couple of years ago in 2021 for the division.
I don't want to.
Today or yesterday,
that
that was
sad.
3 years ago.
Ugh.
3 years ago, clinching the division. Now this.
Time to take a break here on the CHGO White Sox podcast. We got some Chris Getz video coming up. We want to let you know about our friends over at Z-Biotics. This game-changing product we use before a night out with drinks. It's called pre-alcohol. After a night of drinks, we don't bounce back like how we used to. We have to make a choice on whether we can have a drink or have a nice morning. Mm-hmm. But with pre-alcohol, you don't have to make that choice. There is a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking. It's with pre-alcohol. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol prebiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough morning after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's in this byproduct, not dehydration, to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to take Z-Biotics. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Go try out prebiotics with our friends Z-Biotics and their GMO technology. It will help you release different products that will help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. You can go to zbiotics.com/CHGOSOX to learn more and get 50% off your first order when you use code CHGOSOX at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easy and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePick community today. Now you can win up to 100 times your money with PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. With one Caleb Williams passing yard, it gets you one win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard passing gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss out on this deal on PrizePicks because when September it's over, it is gone. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and right here in Illinois. My go-to PrizePicks at the moment, it's still in the playoffs. It's points, rebounds, and assists from Caitlin Clark. They're playing the Connecticut Sun. Hopefully she can get some things done. And I pair that with the Caleb Williams 1 yard. And watch the winnings roll in, Sean. Download the app today. Use the code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Thank you, Herb Lawrence. And that Caleb thing is way too easy to pass up.
Oh, my goodness.
One more chance to do that, so go check that out.
I think he's going to get 1 yard passing this Sunday. Yeah, I think I'm going to go out on a limb. He's going to do it.
It's a very shaky limb you're going out
I
on.
know I'm not supposed to give predictions on this thing, but I think he's going to do it, friends.
All right. To answer DMK17's question in the chat, I do think this was Cannon's last start. We got Davis Martin tomorrow, and then Flexen on Thursday. I thought it was supposed to be Crochet.
Me too.
So I don't know what happened there. We'll have to ask Vinny. Crochet is apparently slated to start on Friday, and then you have Burke pitching on Saturday and closing out the season. Will be Jonathan Cannon. So DMK17? No. Apparently he should have one more start left, but I mean, maybe they reach a point where they don't want to pitch him, but I don't see a reason why he wouldn't pitch on Sunday.
I mean, that screams to me that maybe they're trying to ruin the Tigers' playoff spot because, like you said, Garrett was supposed to pitch on Thursday in the home closer versus the White Sox and the Angels, and they switched him to Friday versus the Tigers, and then you got Cannon on Sunday. So maybe they're like, hey, let's play spoiler instead of having some of our worst pitchers out there. Let's have at least 4 innings of Garrett Crochet.
The guy that probably knows the most about this before we go to Chris Getz is Vinnie Duber. So why don't we just go and bug him while the topic is up? Vinnie, you're going to get a nice little break as we play 8 minutes of Chris Getz. But what is the projected pitchers coming up for the next 5 games? Is Cannon going to get another start?
Yeah, Cannon is scheduled to go on Sunday in the season finale. So we'll have Davis Martin tomorrow, Chris Flexen on Thursday, Garrett Crochet on Friday, someone who I'm forgetting on Saturday, Sean Burke, there it is, and then Sunday will be Cannon again.
Was Crochet supposed to start on Thursday, the final home game? What was any explanation given?
No explanation given. That'll be a question for tomorrow, I'm sure. Obviously, not really post-game material, but because that wasn't announced until it was during the rain delay. It was early, and it was after we talked to everybody. So we'll probably get an explanation on that tomorrow.
All right, cool. We will get some explanations now. You are a part of the very well-attended Chris Getz press conference. We will play Chris Getz's comments here. This is courtesy of the White Sox. We appreciate them filming this and having the audio from this meeting. It was about 25 minutes of Chris Getz speaking. We have boiled it down to 8 minutes. So Chris is going to give his opening comment. He is going to make some comments about the managerial search and Grady Sizemore's part in it and his consideration in it. And then also there is a talk about when this team could be contending next. So we will join you. We'll take a break, and then we'll discuss what Chris Getz had to say. Here's Chris Getz.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Obviously we're reaching the final stretch of the 2024 season. I certainly want to acknowledge the record that we're up against right now, and I think it's really important to do a heartfelt thanks to our fans that have been with us through this very difficult, painful season. They don't deserve this. It's been very trying for me personally and our staff and everyone in this organization. Our fans certainly don't deserve to go through anything like this. I know that they pay money to come to games and watch games. They look to watch the Chicago White Sox as a positive outlet, and we haven't been able to provide too many positive outcomes throughout this season. So it's certainly my job and others now to focus more so on the future, learn from the past, and start building towards where the White Sox deserve to be for our fans and everyone that works here. Now, with that all being said, there certainly were some difficult decisions that we have had to make throughout the year, and those decisions perhaps did not help the 2024 season, and they were more focused on the future of the organization. My hope is that we are not faced with those types of decisions too often in the future, but that certainly has led to a lot of the struggles that we have endured this year. I feel very good about where we're at with the front office. We're quickly going to put most of our focus towards hiring the next manager for the Chicago White Sox. I feel really good about the process that we've built out. We've got a long list of candidates and look forward to eventually hiring the next leader for our dugout that's going to represent not only an extension of the front office, but lead our players, lead our organization towards better days ahead.
Well, when you look at 2025, having another losses could happen again. I mean, fans are going to be restless no matter what you do.
Yeah, all of our focus is for the long-term health. I mean, we're clearly in a rebuild. When you've got this many losses, the one thing it does provide is clarity and direction on where you need to go as an organization. And there are situations that I think front offices have endured before, where you're stuck in the middle and perhaps you're stuck in mediocrity and you don't know how to get out of that. Where we stand right now, it's very clear that we've got some work to do, and the pathway out of that is to be healthy underneath the organization, and that's what we're determined to do. We're not going to take shortcuts, and it may take some time for us to reap the rewards at the major league level. Obviously, we'll go into this off season and do what's best for, once again, the long-term health. You've got free agent, an ability to go into the free agent market. You've got potential trade acquisitions. We're going to do everything we can to improve this major league club, but we're certainly not going to be short-sighted.
When you talk about free agency, that obviously involves spending a lot of money, are you guys prepared to do something like that, or could you be more specific?
Yeah, we haven't determined, the level of free agency that we'll be working in. I can assure you that it won't be the top of the market, but there are going to be other opportunities to go out there and sign players to help us. You look back at the signings of an Eric Fetty and bringing in some of these other players that, helped our major league club, but also we were able to trade these players and reinvest in the organization. So there's going to be those type of opportunities as well.
What have you noticed about players and also Grady during this?
Yeah, I've got a tremendous amount of respect for Grady and the staff. Grady's temperament is exactly what we needed. It was very clear early on, and has remained, that the players have such a high level of respect for him, and that's because of the character that he has, how he communicates to players, how he supports players. The players have responded well. Obviously, they haven't necessarily had the statistical results or anything that has shown up maybe on the win and loss record, but the intent and the effort has been there, and that's a testament to both the players and Grady and the coaching staff.
Can you talk about the criteria for your next manager? Could you share some of the things that you're looking for in the next? We know it's outside of the organization, but what are some of the things that you're looking for in your next manager?
Well, we're looking for someone that understands the situation that we're presently in, that is up for the challenge. I'm looking for a partner in this to help lead this organization. That comes in different forms. We've built out our criteria. We've looked at the desired outcomes. We've got a deep candidate pool, and we'll work through that, and we'll find the best fit for us.
What about the player development aspect of this individual?
That is definitely going to be a strong component of what we're looking for the next manager, is the development of our players at the major league level. I think when it comes to development of players, it certainly is something that needs to regularly be applied at the major league level, regardless of the state of an organization. Now, perhaps in this case, the development background and ability is going to be more meaningful.
With you, is Grady in consideration still? Do you look at him as a candidate?
Grady's in consideration. He's he has a lot of traits that we're looking for, but we certainly want to go through a full process before we make any sort of decision.
Chris, what's the difference now with Grady being in consideration? Just that he's expressed an interest, is that why you've included him in the mix?
Grady he's done a very good job from our evaluation, and we feel like he deserves to be in consideration. I can't say that he's got a leg up on anyone, because it is going to be a deep process, and we're going to find someone that's the best fit for us. But he deserves to be in the conversation.
I don't know how else to put this, but is this embarrassing for the organization, or just part of baseball, or how do you look at that?
It's not something we're proud of. There's a myriad of reasons of why we stand here today with the record that we have. And now, with that being said, personally, I view this as a tremendous opportunity to build something. We've identified areas in the organization that need to improve. It's very clear our major league club has got room for improvement. I've never been energized more than I am now, and I know I can speak for our group. So, is it an embarrassment? We're not proud of this. No one wants to be associated with it, but we're certainly up for the challenge.
Chris, if things go according to plan, when do you see this team being in contention for a playoff spot?
It's tough to say at this point. I mean, we know where we're at from a pitching standpoint. We feel really good about our pitching process, how we acquire players, the certain players that we do acquire, we develop them. We've shown, the success throughout the minor leagues and a little bit at the major league level. You look at our bullpen and some of these younger players that have come up and have gotten tremendous opportunity. I think having flexibility in a bullpen has allowed us to provide more opportunity for players to step up and build their confidence. And I can say the same thing about our starting pitching staff as well. And then you go deeper than that into the minor leagues and Noah Schultz and what he's done this year. We've got Hagen Smith that we just got in the draft. And, certainly, when you think about Edgar Quero and Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, that speaks to our ability to identify left-handed pitchers that can be successful at the major league level. Now, we know that it's more than just pitching. It's about finding offensive players that can play defense and good base running. So we're not balanced right now, but we know that we've got to focus on some other areas so we can be stronger and more competitive.
That was Chris Getz. We will react to it in just a second. But first, let's take a break. We want to let you know about our friends over at Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. They are here to elevate your summer. Sunnyside is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. They have a crazy selection with over 100 different strains to choose from, with easy online ordering and in-store pickup. Wherever you are in Illinois, Sunnyside has a location for you. They have spots as far south as Champaign and as far north as South Beloit. So stop into a store nearest you for expert guidance from their staff or select from quality lines like Cresco or Floracal. You can go check out their Revolution Goobies, because who doesn't like to say the word goobies? Gooby. You can go take a goobie, because you could say the word gooby 100 times. Go check them out at Sunnyside, and you can visit them by visiting sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Again, HICHGO at checkout to qualify for 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary, bright buys every day, only for 21 plus or Illinois medical card holders. We also want to let you know about our friends over at Ray CDJR. If you are in the market for a new vehicle, then check out our friends over at Ray CDJR. Ooh, there's. Before you hit the road this fall, head to Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram to start your adventure there. This September, shop new lower prices across their huge inventory during Jeep Adventure Days that are going on now. For a limited time, lease the new 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo for $239 a month for 27 months, or shop over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. Let the team at Ray CDJR help you during each step of your car shopping journey. With Ray's Price Promise, the number you're hearing right now are the same prices you can expect to shop in-store and online. That's because Ray's Price Promise means no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees. And since they prioritize affordability for their customers, hurry into Ray CDJR today and shop one of Chicagoland's largest inventories, then drive home with more money in your pocket than you'd expect. If you're in the market for a new vehicle, then you have to check out the team at Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram, because they are the only team we recommend. Visit them today on Route 12 in Fox Lake. For more information, visit Ray CDJR in Fox Lake or raycdjr.com, serving the communities since 1963. Okay, Vinnie Duber, before today's game, we thought that this would be lost 121, and even going into the 8th inning, we thought this was going to be lost 121. Before we get to Chris Getz, who spoke about lost 121 before it even happened, what did you make of how things unfolded tonight?
Well, it was certainly a first for this team this year. If you've watched the 2024 White Sox all season long, you have not seen a late comeback victory until tonight. This was their first win when trailing after 6 innings, or their first win after trailing after 7 innings. Hadn't happened at all. And so to see 3 late runs in the 8th inning from this White Sox team, I believe all scored with 2 outs. It's just something they haven't done at all this season. And so kind of reminding us who have been watching all year and not seeing anything like that, what a baseball team can do throughout the season, which is stage an exciting late comeback victory. So obviously it was not pretty. I think probably the 2 plays that will stick with everybody the most from this one are a pair of dropped pop-ups, but the White Sox managed to turn their half of that into 3 runs and come away with a win, a late comeback win, which is something they have not done until here, the 6th to last game of the season.
We left after the 5th inning, so we did hear the cheers and the derisive cheers after that drop pop-up by the White Sox. But how was the atmosphere throughout? To me, in the 5 innings that we were there, it was kind of odd. Understandable, because fans were there to see them lose their 121st game of the year, so they were cheering on pretty much the Angels to do anything well, and when the White Sox did anything well, they're like, ugh. But I heard boos at the end of the game on the broadcast. Was that kind of like the atmosphere that you got all game long?
With the exception of that little rally, yes. I think everybody kind of fell back into default mode there for those 3 straight plays in the 8th inning. And we're like, oh, yeah, this is a team that we want to win most of the time. And they were like, good for them. But for the rest of it, yeah, it was very weird. A pretty nice crowd given the circumstances. You had an hour-plus rain delay. It rained all day long. It's a Tuesday night after the school year starts. I think even if this team was in a normal year, or that wasn't this ridiculously bad season, you wouldn't expect that many people here tonight given the circumstances, and yet there were. But I think you're right, they were here to see one specific outcome, and so much of the game they were cheering against the team whose colors they were wearing. And yeah, when we got to game's end and finally they play the victory music and they get to do a handshake line, how many times have they gotten to actually do that this year? And the crowd boos them for not losing. So that kind of had to suck for the players, to be quite honest. But I guess you buy your ticket and you can do whatever you want.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Sarah. At first, I didn't even recognize what you were playing. But I know it seemed like there was not only a lot of people there, 17,000, we thought 11,000 to 15,000, a lot of media members for Chris Getz's scrum, huh?
Yeah, there's been a lot of national attention on the White Sox, and of course also expanded local attention too, right? When you spend 6 months losing, there's not much impetus for some of the other folks around town or around the area to come out, but this was going to be a big night, so a lot of media, a lot of cameras, and then, like I said, some national folks who have been following the story of what almost surely will end up as the worst baseball team ever.
With 100 people in attendance, what was the biggest takeaway from Chris Getz's 25 minutes with the media?
I think the main takeaway from him, really not just today, but all season long and moving forward, is he's sticking to the plan. I think so many people are seeing what is going to be the worst single season in baseball history, or in modern baseball history at the very least, and saying they got to do something about this. They have to fix this. And we had him say the last time he talked to us that he wouldn't have been surprised if they lost 110 games. So this team was not built to win. And to a lesser degree, obviously, than 120 whatever they end up with, but they were supposed to be bad. And so he's very clearly now saying that they're in a rebuild, quite the turnaround from just last offseason of not wanting to say that word. But now he's saying it because it's true. They're in a rebuild. They're in a long-term plan. And listen, going to year 2 of the rebuild, it's not going to look pretty. And so when you hear him say that they're not going to spend on free agents, but they might go for some of the same type of moves they made last offseason, and there's a avalanche on social media in response to me putting that quote out there, where it's like, oh, you just put together the worst team ever and you're just going to do it again? How could you do that? Well, that's kind of what the plan has been all along, is to kind of, for better or worse, sacrifice these seasons at the major league level, spin the wheels a little bit while something, hopefully for them, happens in the minor leagues. So I don't think anything was ever going to change in terms of, oh, all of a sudden, just because they lost 121 plus and it's the new record, now they're going to change their plans completely and go spend on Juan Soto. Like, no, that wasn't going to happen. And so I think you've got a big takeaway from today is Chris Getz obviously admitting that this is bad. No one wants to be associated with this. And yet the plan rolls on. The rebuild rolls on. This is, for better or worse, or for lack of a better term, I guess, by design.
And Vinny, yesterday we were talking about Martin Maldonado, just, as far as the articles that have come out subsequent last couple of weeks of the Passan one, the Britt Grijalli and Ken Rosenthal one, and then the one by Paul Banks a couple of days ago, just talking about how the White Sox operate behind the scenes. And we remember just how many times you would tell us, like I would ask you, why is Martin Maldonado on his team? Why is Martin Maldonado on his team? And you would say, they really like him. And we kind of surmised that the fact that they really like him is because all those articles came out and said pretty much the game plans the White Sox would be imparting to these catchers or people who are hitters would be very rudimentary, very fun, like just, hey, your stuff will work on the bottom of the zone. And Martin Maldonado gave him a little bit more of a structure of a major league talent evaluator and a plan to attack major league hitters. Is that why he was on the team? And is that going to be the free agents the White Sox are looking for, like players from different organizations that are winning, that are going to come here and teach the players, this is how we do Major League Baseball in this organization, and we're bringing that to the White Sox because obviously you don't have it here.
Certainly all those things are pluses, Herb, and I think that when you do sign somebody like that in a year like this was or like next year is expected to be, those intangible things that don't necessarily, show up in the score sheet or maybe even outweigh what does show up in the score sheet, right? If you're Martin Maldonado, certainly that's the case, right? With that batting average that he was posting, those things could potentially important, right? I think you're going to see a guy like Corey Lee, if he is a part of this for the long haul, if he's on part of this roster for a long time, you're going to see him point back to his time, for example, for his time with Maldonado as a big part of why he's a major league catcher and what kind of major league catcher he's become if he does become an effective one at the end of the day. So those types of traits are certainly valued. I wouldn't say they're only valued by teams in the White Sox position. I think any team around baseball, if they were to acquire a player like that, would complement that part of their game. But they certainly might stand out amongst the White Sox as they're trying to develop younger players who they hope grasp on to that sort of approach and carry it with them even once those veteran guys are gone. I think what you heard, a phrase that we heard from Chris Getz numerous times today was underneath the organization, which is that reference to kind of those behind the scenes things that we have heard and read a lot about lately that are maybe the areas of focus. Even asked about what you're going to do, what are the off-season priorities? A pretty general question about off-season priorities. Chris started talking about processes and the way they do things. And again, he used that phrase underneath the organization. I like to call it behind the scenes, right? Because it's not, we got to go out and get a second baseman or we got to go out and get a fourth starting pitcher, right? Because right now, this organizational makeover that he's doing needs to be very wide-reaching. And you've read in those stories why it needs to be so wide-reaching. And I think you're seeing focus from the front office and even potentially some financial focus, on Jerry's part and the way that the front office is spreading their resources around on things that don't equal, X amount of WAR in 2025, but they will equal, they hope, a vastly better organization and one that runs more like a successful organization that you would see around baseball right now.
We will get to the Grady stuff in a second. You can read more about Grady Sizemore being a part of the managerial search up at allchgo.com. Vinny has an article from earlier today about that. But just to talk about the offseason initiatives, what Chris Getz said and wasn't a part of the 8 minutes, we said, we're looking at a handful of processes. We brought in David Keller, who's going to help Luis Silverio, my bad, first time saying that name. They will team up on the international side. We're building out an evaluation and development process with them. With that group we have now, we're looking to improve our analytical group. We've identified areas that need to be more emphasized to allow us to develop players and identify players to acquire, and that's the focus of this offseason, to build on that. I guess that's where, when I was tweeting and talking about earlier in the show that hopefully the season leads to something, a lot of the pushback has been Jerry focused. I guess, what have you noticed between Chris as a general manager and Rick as a general manager, and now hearing about the internal strife between Rick and Kenny? Do you see a little bit more freedom with Chris? Do you see a little bit more of a true direction rather than two people pulling an organization in one way? Is hope for the Sox fan the fact that Chris Getz is the guy and that he is already talking about certain ways of spending the money, if it not be for a Juan Soto, to maybe build the next Juan Soto?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question. I think that if you're talking about the differences between the previous regime and then the current one, look at what that regime accomplished. And I always remind people that Rick Hahn was there when they won the World Series in 2005, right? I mean, Kenny Williams was the guy, but Rick Hahn was the assistant general manager. Like that was their success. And as you move on in time, you get, the whole mired in mediocrity era in which they were spending money, but by throwing it at free agents that maybe didn't add up to the same kind of winning that they would have liked to see. And then came the rebuild, right? So it was kind of this odd trajectory that led to the end of that tenure. Whereas Chris Getz is stepping into something, and his first act is tearing it down and completely starting over again. That is different in that I think that their goals are a little different. Obviously, they're both trying to win and create a sustainable winner and everything. But I think when you hear Chris Getz talk, you do pick up on those between the lines things of like, there's so much that you don't see or that you wouldn't think would fall under my job title of going out and just getting players and stuff like that needs to be addressed. And I think that when he talks about stuff behind the scenes, I mean, listen, he was asked what the priorities are this offseason. You just read the quote. It's international scouting, it's analytics. I mean, it's things that a lot of other teams, when they're ready to win, those departments were fixed a long time ago, right? And so, I mean, it really is a complete organizational makeover. And I think that maybe because the previous two guys who were in charge for so long, they maybe didn't address those types of things as strongly or as I don't even want to say that. I guess I want to say they didn't go to do the full makeover of top to bottom of this thing like Chris Getz seems he needs to do. That seems to be the pitch that Chris Getz has made to Jerry Reinsdorf, right? I mean, that seems to be what it is him and his front office have said, okay, we need to do everything differently. It's not going to be as quick a fix. And I looked this up today because I wanted to get it right. Everybody constantly uses that quote that Jerry had last summer about how Chris was promoted because if you went with somebody from the outside, it would have taken even longer. About Chris is the guy who can do it the fastest. The quote that should be being dug up is Jerry flat out saying they weren't going to do a rebuild again. Flat out saying we're not going to get rid of the guys we have now and tear it all down and start over. We're not going to do that. So somewhere between that day and the offseason, Chris Getz convinced Jerry Reinsdorf that is what they were going to do.
That's interesting. And two, I want to go back because I went back to and I had a different question, but I went back to November after you spoke to him at the general manager meetings, and this is what you wrote. This might sound like a bunch of rebuild talk to plenty of fans. Sounded like rebuild talk to us, reminiscent of the trade that brought Cease here in the first place, and Getz didn't exactly dismiss such a notion by refusing to commit to building a team that would compete for an AL Central title in 2024. If anything, his repeated descriptions of attempting to establish an organization-wide identity and addressing a laundry list of needs pointed towards a job that could take multiple off seasons to accomplish, even if Jerry Reinsdorf's reasoning for promoting Getz without interviewing any outside candidates was that Getz would turn the franchise around quicker than anyone else. So, I mean, you even wrote about that in November pretty much. I just thought, first of all, with that, like, do you think that when Chris said, I don't like our team back in November at the GM meetings, he knew that this was the future? He just kind of had to get through this season? Because I feel like if they weren't going to rebuild it, they would have spent a little bit more than $22 million this offseason. And then even you see in spring training, they end up dealing Cease, and you hear from Chris Getz, oh, we're going to have the same offseason as we just did. So, like, it seems like they're having the same offseason for a team that maybe Chris Getz convinced Jerry that they can compete with, for a team that is on the precipice of losing 121 plus games.
Yeah, I don't think folks should be surprised if you have come to peace with the fact that the White Sox are in a rebuild. You don't have to be happy about it, but it just, if you've recognized that reality, you should not be surprised when you hear Chris Getz say the offseason could look very similar to the last one. And it might look very similar. You brought up Dylan Cease being traded. Garrett Crochet might be traded, and it might just be the ace of your staff gets traded. You go out and get some cheap free agents or relatively inexpensive free agents, and that's that. And you go into next year with very little expectation of winning, and we could be here this time next year talking about another triple-digit loss season. It's just very possible, and it's not, and it really wouldn't surprise, right? I mean, year 2 of the previous rebuild under Rick Hahn was the 100-loss one, right? The one before that was 95 losses. In between, I brought it up last week, I think, in between the free agent tally was Wellington Castillo and Miguel Gonzalez. I'm not quite sure why, I know why folks want them to go and fix this and change this roster because they don't want to sit through this again. But I don't think folks should be surprised that that's going to happen again because that's how rebuilds work. And it's not just 1 year down and then you're a division contender the following year. It's sacrifice season after season with the idea of a sustained winner. Now, again, no one's telling you that that's exactly what's going to happen. All you got to do is go back to the last one to know that these things don't work out. The Baltimore Orioles made the playoffs again this year, but is anybody picking them right now to win the World Series? They've been kind of up and down a little bit. They lost all those 100-loss seasons in a row. And while they still got a great team and a great collection of prospects and a bright future, they're showing you that you don't just get handed a World Series trophy for losing 100 games 3 times in a row. So nobody should be happy that the White Sox are going through this. But when this is what's very clearly being laid out as the plan that Chris Getz is sticking to even through the worst season in baseball history, don't be surprised if there's no impetus on that behalf of the team to go dramatically change everything to avoid doing this again.
One of the players that is key to this rebuild is now here in Chicago on the taxi squad. Edgar Quero is in Chicago right now. What were the reasons for him to be called up to this taxi squad, but given by either Grady or Chris Getz?
So I don't think folks should be too excited. I don't think he's going to be put on the roster unless there's an injury. That's what was explained before the game. At least that was the thought of what might happen. This is a guy who was playing at Charlotte, obviously. The Charlotte season is over. And so he comes back from an injury, and where could he go? He can go work out in Arizona, or he can be around the big league club for a week. So I think that they're just taking that opportunity to get him some exposure. That's nice, right? Hey, sit in the meeting and see how they do things kind of thing at the big league level. But it doesn't seem to me like he is going to be put on the active roster unless there's a need.
We got 90 people watching, 98 people now. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. We only got about 30 likes, so if you haven't hit that like button, make sure you're liking. Make sure you're subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. There's a couple answers from Getz that made me feel a little iffy. And going back to your point of, Jerry said in August there wasn't going to be a rebuild. We were going to, go with these players. But then today, Chris was asked any regrets from the preseason team building. And his answer kind of diverted away from the actual team building, I think, because he answered the trades like, oh, we don't regret trading Aaron Bummer or Dylan Cease. These decisions that we made, this is his direct quote, whether it be an Aaron Bummer trade or Dylan Cease trade, obviously very talented players. The players that were acquired were not directly brought in to make us that much better in 2024. It was more 2025 and beyond. It was to build our prospect capital to eventually be more successful at the major league level. At least Aaron Bummer didn't get any prospects for him. I mean, that was, kind of just a complete dump. You would call him Braden Shoemaker?
Get Riley Gowans.
Yeah, got Riley Gowans. Maybe. But he was the last name in that trade, and now he's like a guy that we're actually looking at. Mm-hmm. And then the Cease trade, obviously, there's Thorpe, there's Zavala, and then you have Iriarte. But I feel like even that answer goes back to what you brought up. Like, Jerry was saying Chris was hired because they weren't going to do a rebuild. And I feel like, Chris doesn't have any regrets on the free agency because he knew this team was going to be bad. I don't know. And even when you brought up the Orioles, he was asked about the Orioles and Astros rebuild, but it takes out of context that those teams could tank on purpose to get the number 1 draft pick. The White Sox can't even do that now. And obviously this year, they're not even going to end up with the number 1 overall pick. So I don't think their intention was to be this bad in 2024. Obviously not like this bad, but even when you brought up the 110 losses, Chris kind of sounded like 120 was unfathomable. Like, we thought at most we'd lose 110 games. Even approaching on this is kind of surprising. I don't know. Like, do you feel like Jerry and Chris were in sync with no rebuild when Jerry said that in August?
I'm not. it's weird to say that it might not have come up, because you would think that the guy you promoted, you'd have an idea of where the franchise was going to go. But I would say this. I would say Chris was very intentional at that time, and probably had in his mind that he was going to do a full makeover. That's the actions that have borne fruit. I don't think he took control of a car that he'd been sitting in the back seat of for the last 6 years and said, whoa, we got to fix this. You know what I mean? Like, I think he obviously knew what was going on. He was the assistant GM. He was going to come in, and if he felt that the organization needed to be dramatically overhauled, he was going to do that. And he has taken them down the road of doing that. That included a rebuild at the major league level. Obviously, I mean, you don't go to the winter meetings showing up with having Dylan Cease and Luis Robert Jr. being talked about as trade rumors and not be in a rebuild, right? I mean, that's just, we were laughing at the time that they wouldn't use that word. So I think, and from what Chris and what you've seen, from what Chris has said and what you've seen in the some of the articles that you referenced, some of the reporting that you've referenced, Jerry's been very receptive to these ideas, and I don't think that they've had to fight him about this at all. At least that's the words that we're hearing. I think that day, if I had to guess, I would say that day in August was him talking up the players that he currently had. There's another question he was asked that day saying, will you be good next year? Can you turn this around that quickly, that in 2024 you'll be good? And he goes on to talk about how all the players they had there made such a strong foundation, referencing the idea that they had Moncada and Robert and Eloy and Cease and Vaughn. But then you come and you start this year again, and I really do think that, with the exception, obviously, of Robert, but the idea that if any of those guys had a good first half, they were probably going to be traded. And so I think that day, Jerry, as the competitor, as the guy who doesn't like to watch his team lose all the time, I think probably thought that we're not going to go out and lose on purpose. And I think that somewhere along the way, maybe even, in conversations very shortly thereafter, Chris probably laid out a plan that included what you're seeing and got the reception and the support that he's been talking up for a year now.
I know we got to go, but I just hope when Jerry does speak that he explains why it's seemingly he's more receptive to what Chris Getz is proposing than what Rick Hahn and Kenny. Because I'm sure they saw the same shortcomings the White Sox had as an organization. But now it seems like the needle's moving a little bit with Chris Getz, with the international signings and look more analytical staff being hired in this offseason. And hopefully he is being a little bit more open to those things.
Real quick, and this is going to be what we get to with the meat of this. We also have some Grady Sizemore sound on this exact thing. We want to let you know how to become a diehard. We've seen our pal Jared in here, but we want to give a shout out to everyone that has been with us. You can become a diehard today. You get a lot of perks. Not only can you get 20% off to the events that we throw, we have done some White Sox ones specifically. We've done some takeovers at the actual park, but you also get the chance to talk with us in our Discord. You can talk to diehards alike, whether it be about the White Sox or Chicago sports. We have a ton of different topics and groups you can join, but we have a members-only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. You can come talk Sox with us, Bears, Bulls, Hawks, Fire, Red Star, etc.
Food.
Pets, food. We obviously have post-game shows here every single day. Vinny has premium content that's posted at allchgo.com, like the Grady thing that is free, but also on Monday, we do have a White Sox weekly newsletter that is for diehards that Vinny posts, and you also get a free shirt when you become a member. So we would love if you joined us today, become a diehard, get this nice, beautiful black box that's right in front of Herb.
Everybody.
And you get a shirt of your choice. You get 20% off events and merch, along with access to the CHGO Discord. So go check out allchgo.com/diehard. All right. My biggest worry, even though they're putting things into the international scouting and et cetera, Chris brought up Grady. And he talked about him very glowingly today. You obviously wrote about that at allchgo.com. But am I wrong to feel like that's a step back? Like, oh, yes, we're doing everything with international. We're doing everything with player development. And even a month ago, this guy's saying we are looking for someone in a different dugout that's in uniform. And then today, he kind of walks it back. And Grady had put out to Scott Merkin, oh, I'd love to be in consideration. Well, here's Grady in consideration. Am I wrong to feel... I feel a little bit betrayed because it feels like this is going to end up with Grady Sizemore managing the 2025 White Sox, and that will leave an absolutely bad taste in my mouth. Did you get any of that sense that Grady is maybe like a bigger contender than we previously thought?
I think that feeling, and I saw a lot of that in the reaction on social media, is fans probably freaking out a little too much, in my opinion. I didn't get the sense that he has suddenly risen to the top of their list of candidates. But I say that because we don't know the list of their candidates. I think that it's easy to point all of our attention, whether it's fearful attention like you're talking about, or just attention like I would do as a writer, on the only name we've heard attached to this search, right? And so Chris went ahead and said he doesn't think that Grady doing a good job has given him a leg up on anybody else. He said that their primary focus is still on what they were talking about, somebody wearing a uniform in another dugout right now for another organization. And he kept talking about how deep this candidate list of theirs is. So I think the idea that there is so little information publicly about how they're going to conduct the search for their next manager is driving the spotlight toward Grady Sizemore. All that being said, they are very happy with Grady Sizemore, and they really like what he has done. You heard Chris say in the clip that you played of his media session today that Grady's temperament was something that was much needed after they got rid of Pedro Grifol last month. It's been nothing but rave reviews, really, for Grady Sizemore, for people who are employees of the White Sox. Mainly that means the players. The players love this guy. They like that he's a recent former player. They respect him for that reason. But certainly the front office has been very enamored with him as well. I don't think, or let's put it this way, I have no idea what sort of impact that makes on their search. I would not be surprised if they're just doing this because they are so happy with how Grady has behaved. We can go back to 2022 and remember that Miguel Quero got an interview after stepping into the interim role for the last month of that season, and they went with somebody who was wearing a uniform in another dugout in Pedro Grifol. So the way that Chris talked about Grady today and his consideration for this gig struck me as a reward for a job well done. A guy who has discovered that Major League managing is something that he really likes, even though he had no intention of doing that job this year. I think it strikes more as a reward type situation, but they think highly of him, and they just came out and said that he's under consideration for the full-time opening. I would have to imagine that will be a far more wide-ranging search than the one that landed Chris Getz his job. I don't think they're just going to say, all right, Grady Sizemore, you're standing here right now. We're going to go ahead and give it to you because you have worn a White Sox shirt for the past year. I don't think that's going to happen, but we can't discount that he has a shot at the job because the general manager just said that he's under consideration for the job.
They'll be very disappointed if Grady Sizemore was the manager next year because they have a better candidate in Double-A right now in Sergio Santos, who will do exactly what you want the team to do, develop the talent, and he has developed the talent down in Double-A into a championship of the Southern League, which they haven't won in quite some time. So I would say that if I were the White Sox and looking for a manager, Grady Sizemore would be at the bottom of that list with Sergio Santos at the top of that list if we're looking insular, which they're not necessarily.
Yeah, and honestly, too, like the reason why I'm a little bit worried is it did feel like the Quero thing was a little bit more out of respect because he was the interim manager. I don't remember Rick ever speaking this highly of Miguel Quero. I don't remember him bagging him, but I mean, there was a lot of like kind of prepping up and propping up Grady, in my opinion, today. I thought it was fairly surprising at the length that Chris went to, especially with his record. And I understand the temperament's there, but also like he has fairly, like, this is a manager that has kid gloves on. is a guy that we have heard from, most of the media that the front office is fairly involved with Grady Sizemore from a day-to-day basis, that he has some extra help that they've brought in since Pedro Grifal's removal. So I don't know if I vibe with this whole Grady thing. Hopefully it's just out of respect and maybe they keep him as the bench coach or whatever. But I'm not a big fan of it. It feels a little too nice from Chris Getz. There was a report from Bruce Levine today from 670 The Score about Clayton McCullough. He is the current first base coach of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Back in August, I think we talked about him, but here's a little bit about Clayton McCullough. He is an extremely successful minor league manager, now like your guy Sergio Santos. Has been around the Dodgers, has overlapped with Chris Getz in Toronto. His dad is a former Royal Scout with connections to both Bannister and Gene Watson. Has a background in player development, who is known for his ability for helping develop hitters, young players, especially hitters who could be the position player version of Bannister and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. Love the guy too. So not too bad. I'm not ruling out the idea of Clayton McCullough as a manager and Grady sticking on as bench coach. Is Grady gone after the year if he's not the manager? Do we know?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, the manager would have a say, if not all the say, in choosing his big league staff. But as we know, there's a lot of places in the organization that guys can coach and have jobs that aren't necessarily part of the major league coaching staff, right? I mean, we see minor league coordinators in doing every sort of thing, roving coach or whatever. They can just make stuff up if they wanted to keep Grady Sizemore around as a part of this organization.
All right. I think that's going to do it for the CHGO White Sox podcast. We have a show tomorrow, so if there's anything else I want to talk about, let's talk about it there. Make sure you're joining us by hitting that like button and subscribing to the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. That's Herb Lawrence, our CHGO White Sox community leader. The man in the box is Vinnie Duber. You can follow him at Vinnie Duber and read his work at allchgo.com. I'm Sean Anderson. You can follow me at Sean_W_Anderson. Thank you to Sarah for producing the show. We will talk to you tomorrow for the postgame of the Angels and Sox game. Goodbye.
We all silly like the mayor.